just have to have like a level of confidence, and
Absolutely.
unless they give you a reason not, where the trust has been broken in a sense.
Absolutely.
But you're right, and I did take that.
I wanna add that point too, just to try to make a quick little blurb because I always think that's important and some people
Yeah.
don't know this. To me, trust is confidence.
Mhm.
It's the confidence that I can follow what you say, and when you say something, I can actually believe that it's more than likely going to happen, or if you're telling me something's not happening, that it's not happening.
Yes.
But once you violate it, what you're actually doing is you're breaking the confidence that I once had in your word. And
Yes.
as people, all we have is our word,
Right.
especially as men, right? That's
Mhm.
all we can hold on to. That's what provides security and stability in the relationship. Go about how you had some relationships that happened obviously before you got to your fiance. Can
Right.
you touch a little bit on like what some of those relationships were like in terms of what you experienced and what did you generally take away from those
Right.
experiences?
Yeah, definitely. So, like, with my first ever boyfriend, who they say is like the hardest and it's the biggest heartache. Sure, I cried a lot of tears for that guy. And
Mhm.
looking back, I'm like, why? But I had no business being in a serious, or what I thought was a serious relationship. But what I
Mm.
will say is I feel like my heart never changed because I gave my whole heart, even in that young, naive relationship. And in that first one, I experienced, I thought it was love, right? We always think the first one is real love. And I was hearing things like, oh, like I kind of, I've been hearing that he's cheated on you and la la la. And I'm just like, no. And my parents, they have just, parental intuition, and
Mhm.
my mom was very much like this, this isn't going to work. Like, you shouldn't, first of all, you shouldn't be dating. And
Mhm.
two, look it, like, he's immature in a lot of ways. He's not trying to settle down. And I don't blame the guy. Like, he's a kid and you
Mhm.
too. But it's like, but that's, I think, what separates us too. Like, um, at that age, like girls and guys kind of thing is like, guys are just like, like, messing around. I don't wanna say everyone's like that because it's not true,
Sure.
but girls, I feel like, have always had, like, this sentimental, like, softness to them, and they looking at myself then, I was just this naive girl, and I thought that that was true love. And anyways, I experienced, just, like, someone who kinda had me go against my morals and values, and that
Mm.
was huge because my moral parents have always been my moral compass.
Mm.
And I knew that certain things were wrong, that he was, trying to have me, like, engage in a sense. And I was like, okay, I knew in my heart this was wrong, but I
Yeah.
was just, like, as a kid, and I consider myself a kid, I was a teenager, yeah, but I had so much growing and so much learning to do.
Mhm.
So I think just like going against my values is something I experienced during that time a little bit, where I was like, one, lying to my parents,
Mm. Absolutely.
like sneaking out with him at one point, like, to hang out, and I shouldn't have been doing that. So yeah, going against my values was one, and that should have been the biggest red flag. But then, of course, that all hit the fan when I find out, like, the stories about him cheating on me were true because I saw something. And I'm happy to say that I did walk away at that point, as hard as it was. Like, I walked away, and I
Good
remember,
for
like,
you.
yeah, I remember just crying, and my dad's like, "Everything's gonna be okay." Like, and he was holding me, and it was hard for like a couple days, maybe a week. I'll give it that, right? But then I realized, okay, like, I had no business being in a relationship like that, and thank God it's over. So
Yeah.
in that first relationship, that's kind of what I experienced. Um, Fast forward a couple years to like my college years, I met somebody else, and through mutual friends, and of course, at first it was all good, right? Like that
Mhm.
honeymoon phase, everything's great. He actually used to tell me, my ex, we talked a little bit about our past relationships, the one I had and the one he had. My ex was crazy. That was his story. Like, she was psycho and all this stuff. And I believed him because he just seemed like such a great guy. Come to find out, as the relationship progressed, he became very jealous.
Mm.
I couldn't have guy friends. And shame on me for allowing that. So I feel like any girls out there, if you're in a relationship where someone is just jealous and worked up about you talking to like one of your boyfriends, and I get it. Like, I know there's a fine line. Like, what you can't. I know they say you can't have guy friends, you can't have girlfriends when you're in a relationship. But I knew that the people I was talking to weren't like, didn't have that intention with me. They were just
Mm.
friends from like, middle school. Anyways, the bottom line is he would start. And I gave him this power over me where he asked for my passwords for my social media accounts and I gave it to
Mm,
him. And I gave him that power. And then sure enough, I come to find out he's like blocking guys and all this stuff like that. And I was
okay.
like, okay, this isn't right. And then I started to see him become a little bit more like explosive on me. Thankfully, he never put his hands on me, but it became like this emotional, mental abuse type situation.
Mm,
And my parents are too, like they know me better than anyone. Like I would try to put on a happy face, but it was like something's going on,
Thumbs off.
something's off. And I didn't want to admit to it. But I guess sure enough, there was always something that where things just hit the fan. I kind of let it, like I said, like a few months prior to the relationship ending, I was already kind of falling out of it because I was like, I knew this wasn't okay, but he played on my emotions and my heart and my kindness. So I, again, another point is don't mistake someone's, I guess, compassion and goodness for weakness, even though at the time that was what was happening. I finally like, you kind of have to come back to who you are and what it is that you stand for, what's important to you, your values, and that's
Absolutely.
what allowed me to like, walk away and finally put my foot down like this is not okay. And thankfully I eventually came to my senses and ended that relationship because what I hear and what I see a lot of a lot of times happening is that it does end up becoming physical even, and there's just battered woman syndrome and all that, and I was not about to be a victim of that because I knew better, and it's just I wasn't going to let it get to that point. But it's not that it happened overnight because
Right.
I learned over time that I was being manipulated and I didn't know that right away.
And I mean, and that makes sense. I mean, if it's been, if you're not maybe as experienced, which many of us are not, and you're just kind of learning obviously as you go, there might
Right.
be things once the emotions come into play, and this is always where it gets a little tricky, right?
Right.
Because emotions, I always try to make this point, emotions cloud judgment.
Hmm.
And
Mm,
so we maybe compromise in areas that we otherwise would not, but it's because of the emotions that we have attached to this person that we sort
absolutely.
of make excuses, or or what I in therapy we call rationalizing,
Right.
basically excusing their behavior.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense, that you're describing that he's doing these different things that go against, like who you are, what you were raised to be able to expect maybe from a man.
Right.
And based on some things, maybe there's some other concerns that he had. And this is why I was talking about obviously therapy that he needed to work through, right?
Right.
I
Yes.
because let me give you the nuanced take of what you just said. And this is how I would say it, right? As a man, I can certainly appreciate the concern about your female partner having a lot of male friends.
Right.
I can totally appreciate that because
Mhm.
men, we are, for the most part, very territorial,
Oh yeah.
right? And it's not necessarily because we have, bad attitudes. It's just a lot of it is ingrained in us biologically, to protect. And some of
Right.
that is even further heightened based on how we grew up. So, like, I have an older sister, so like I grew up around a pretty good amount of women. I was pretty balanced, but I have a certain understanding of sometimes how guys may be. So my first thought is to try to protect, right?
Right.
So for a lot of guys, that's the case. That's why they make those kind of comments, like you shouldn't have a lot of female or male friends
Right.
because there is a risk. It may be low, but there's still a risk. Or we need to have a compromise. This would be the other side of that.
Mhm.
We, meaning the partners, we need to have conversations about that so that if I'm the woman, maybe in that case, I need to be able to provide you a certain level of comfort
Right.
in knowing that nothing's going to happen, and how that might look might be a little different. But
Right.
if I say, hey, I want this person in my life, but my partner says it makes them very uncomfortable, if I value my partner, I have to consider that and figure out what am I willing to do in order to try to appease them,
Right.
right? Not because
Mhm.
they're controlling in that way. It's a
Yeah.
comfort thing. The same way if you said to your partner, like, when you do this thing, it makes me uncomfortable. When you say this thing, it makes me uncomfortable. If they value you, then they'll consider modifying that behavior,
Right.
right? That's
Right.
just that's out of consideration. That wouldn't be manipulation. That would be out of consideration.
Correct.
But regardless, to your point, you have to be able to communicate those things. And based on what you said, it didn't sound like he was really doing that.
No, it was more just kinda like, "You gotta stop, like, this is what I'm gonna do." Again, like, blocking people from my accounts and all that stuff, but yeah, you make a really valid point, and kinda going off of that, like, in this relationship I'm in now, I made a conscious decision to kinda, like, remove people from my life that I knew kinda had, like, I guess you could say, like, a thing for me, that we were friends, but I knew very well that they like me at one point. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Even though Tim, and I think, like you said, you want to do it for that person. Well, I knew early on Tim was my person. Like just the
Mhm.
way he loved me from the beginning, and was just I just knew I wanted to do this for him. He never asked me to. He's never requested anything like that of me because he trusted me.
Mhm.
But because I valued him so much, I made a conscious effort to just remove those people.
That's
And
good.
I know that meant like a lot to him, in a sense, because like you said, guys are territorial. And I know
Yeah.
he has a little bit about him too, but again, it comes back to the trust thing too. I think it's two sides to it. Like I know the person I'm dating, and I know that um she's not gonna, go out and cheat on me or go out and like you just have to have like a level of confidence, and
Absolutely.
unless they give you a reason not, where the trust has been broken in a sense.
Absolutely.
But you're right, and I did take that.
I wanna add that point too, just to try to make a quick little blurb because I always think that's important and some people
Yeah.
don't know this. To me, trust is confidence.
Mhm.
It's the confidence that I can follow what you say, and when you say something, I can actually believe that it's more than likely going to happen, or if you're telling me something's not happening, that it's not happening.
Yes.
But once you violate it, what you're actually doing is you're breaking the confidence that I once had in your word. And
Yes.
as people, all we have is our word,
Right.
especially as men, right? That's
Mhm.
all we can hold on to. That's what provides security and stability in the relationship.